Yes, that opened a door I can't close now. He squeezed my shoulder gently. But I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise you that. I should have been terrified. Should have run from this complication, this danger I hadn't asked for. Instead, I found myself asking, what happens now? Now we're careful. Now you let my men keep you safe. And now I deal with the people who think they can threaten what's mine. There it was again. That possessive word that should have bothered me but somehow didn't. Because standing in Nicholas DeLuca's penthouse at midnight, seeing the concern and determination in his eyes, I realized that maybe being his wasn't a cage at all. Maybe it was the safest place I could be. Tyler's surgery was scheduled for the following Friday, which gave me a week of restless nights and anxious days. But something else was happening too. Something I couldn't ignore no matter how much I wanted to focus solely on my brother's recovery. The security around me had intensified in ways both obvious and subtle. When I left the penthouse for my evening visit to the hospital, I'd see Marco's men stationed near the elevator. On the subway platform, I'd catch glimpses of familiar faces from Nicholas's security detail, always 2 cars away but never out of sight. Outside my apartment building in Queens, a black sedan would be parked across the street, engine running, someone always inside. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, paranoia brought on by stress about Tyler's condition. But by the 3rd day, I couldn't deny the pattern anymore. I found Nicholas in his study late Thursday afternoon, speaking quietly on the phone in Italian. When he saw me in the doorway, he ended the call quickly. "Gabriella, I thought you'd left for the hospital already. I wanted to talk to you first." I closed the door behind me, needing privacy for this conversation. About the men following me. His expression didn't change, which was answer enough. "You noticed. Kind of hard not to when they're everywhere I go." I crossed my arms, suddenly defensive. "What's going on, Nicholas? And please don't tell me it's nothing." He set his phone down and stood, moving around the desk to lean against it. "Do you remember what I said about people asking questions? About consequences?" "Yes. The situation has escalated. Roberto Ferraro has been making inquiries about you through various channels. Where you live, where you go, who you see." His jaw tightened. "He's testing boundaries, seeing if I'll react." My stomach dropped. Testing boundaries how? By demonstrating that he can reach you if he wants to. That my protection isn't absolute. Nicholas ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "It's a power play. He wants me to know that anything I care about is vulnerable." The clinical way he explained it didn't match the fear coursing through me. So what does that mean for me? Am I in actual danger? Not if I can help it. That's why the security detail. He moved closer, his voice softening. "I won't let anything happen to you, Gabriella. But I need you to be smart about this. No taking different routes home. No going places alone. No deviating from your normal routine without telling Marco first." The rules felt suffocating, even as I understood their necessity. "This is because of what you said that night. Because you claimed me in front of him. Yes, and I don't regret it." His brown eyes held mine, fierce and certain. "But I do regret that it put you at risk. I should have been angry. Should have blamed him for dragging me into his dangerous world. Instead, I found myself asking, what do we do now?" Nicholas seemed surprised by the question, or maybe by the "we" in it. "I have a proposal, but I need you to hear me out before you decide." "Okay. Move into the penthouse. Temporarily." He held up a hand when I started to protest. "Not as an employee. There's a guest suite in the private wing, completely separate from the main living areas. You'd have your own space, your own entrance, but you'd be protected. The building has security that rivals most government facilities." The suggestion was logical, even practical, but it also felt like crossing a line we couldn't uncross. "Nicholas, I can't just abandon my apartment and move in here. Why not? You spend most of your time here anyway, and the rest at the hospital or in class. Your apartment in Queens is isolated, difficult to secure. Here, you'd be safe. Here, I'd be dependent on you for everything." "No." His voice was firm. "You'd be accepting protection while maintaining your independence. Keep working if you want, though you don't have to. Continue your classes. Visit Tyler every day. Nothing about your life changes except the address where you sleep. I moved to the window, looking out at the city stretching endlessly below. The penthouse had always felt like a different world, elevated and untouchable. Moving here would mean stepping fully into Nicholas's life, into his world of wealth and danger and complicated loyalties. What about after? I asked quietly. When the threat passes? When Roberto moves on to other targets? Do I just move back to my tiny apartment and pretend none of this happened? Nicholas's reflection appeared in the glass beside mine. Is that what you want? To pretend this hasn't happened? I turned to face him. I don't know what I want. A week ago, you were just my employer. Now you've paid for my brother's surgery, you're protecting me from rivals, and you're asking me to move into your home. It's a lot to process. I know it is. And if you say no, I'll respect that. I'll find other ways to keep you safe. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But I'd prefer you here, where I know you're protected, where I can... He stopped, something vulnerable crossing his features. Where I can see that you're okay. The admission cost him something, I could tell. Nicholas DeLuca didn't admit to caring easily, didn't show weakness or attachment. But he was showing it now, to me. If I agree, I said slowly, I need conditions. Name them. I keep my job. I still work my normal shifts, still help with household tasks. I'm not going to live here like a guest while everyone else works around me. Agreed. I continue my classes, both the ones I'm taking now and the hospital volunteer program I started last week. His eyebrows rose slightly. You started volunteering? At Brooklyn Methodist. They have a program helping families navigate insurance and financial aid for patients with chronic conditions. I thought I could help, given my situation with Tyler. I met his gaze. That doesn't stop just because I move here. Of course not. What else? I visit Tyler every day until his surgery. After that, as often as he needs me. No restrictions on hospital visits. Gabriella, I would never... Nicholas shook his head. Yes. Obviously, yes. Anything else? I took a breath, steadying myself for the most important condition. This doesn't mean I'm yours. Not in the way Roberto interprets it. I'm not property to be claimed or protected. I'm a person making a choice to accept help from someone I trust. But I'm still me. Still independent. Still free to leave if I want to. Nicholas stepped closer, his expression serious. I would never think of you as property. What I said to Roberto was instinct, protective and possessive in a way I don't entirely understand. But it wasn't about ownership. His hand came up to cup my cheek, gentle and warm. If you move in here, it's because you choose to. And if you choose to leave, I won't stop you. Though I'll do everything I can to convince you to stay. The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability in his touch, broke through my remaining resistance. Okay. I'll move in. Temporarily. Until this situation with Roberto resolves. Relief washed over his features so completely that I realized how worried he'd been that I'd refuse. When can you be ready? I don't have much to pack. Tomorrow? I'll send Marco to help. And Gabriella? He smiled, something warm and genuine. Thank you for trusting me. Moving happened faster than I expected. Marco and 2 other men collected my belongings from Queens the next morning, fitting everything I owned into 3 suitcases and 4 boxes. It was humbling, seeing my entire life condensed so efficiently. The guest suite Nicholas had mentioned turned out to be larger than my entire apartment had been. A bedroom with a queen bed and windows overlooking the city. A sitting area with a comfortable couch and television. A full bathroom with a soaking tub and separate shower. Even a small kitchenette with a refrigerator and microwave. This is too much, I said when Nicholas showed me around. It's what was available. Make it yours however you want. If you need anything, just ask. Tyler's surgery went well. I sat in the waiting room for 6 hours while Dr. Roberts repaired the valve defect, with Nicholas beside me the entire time, despite having meetings he could have attended. When the doctor finally emerged to say everything had gone smoothly, I'd cried with relief against Nicholas's shoulder. The recovery would take weeks, but Tyler was young and strong. The prognosis was excellent. Living in close proximity to Nicholas changed things between us in ways both subtle and profound. We'd always had our early morning coffee routine, but now it happened in his kitchen with me wearing comfortable pajamas instead of my work uniform. Conversations that used to be stolen moments became extended discussions over breakfast or late dinners after I returned from the hospital. We learned each other's rhythms. I discovered that Nicholas was cranky before his first espresso but thoughtful after his second, that he read historical biographies before bed and marked passages with a pencil he kept on his nightstand, that he hated talking on the phone but would do it for hours if the situation required. He learned that I was quietest in the mornings, needing silence to ease into the day, that I reorganized things when I was stressed, alphabetizing books or color-coding files, that I fell asleep easily but woke at the slightest noise, a habit developed from years of being responsible for Tyler. 2 weeks after moving in, on a night when Tyler had been particularly cheerful during my visit, I returned to find Nicholas in the kitchen making dinner. Actually cooking, not just reheating something the chef had prepared. "You cook?" I set my bag down, surprised. "Sometimes. When I want to think." He gestured to the stove where pasta bubbled in a pot. "Hungry?" "Starving. The hospital cafeteria is terrible." We ate together at the breakfast bar, the same place where so many of our conversations had happened. The pasta was simple but perfectly done, the sauce rich with garlic and herbs. "This is delicious," I said after several bites. "My mother's recipe. One of the few things she taught me before." He stopped, something painful flickering across his face. "Before what?" "Before she left. I was 12. He set his fork down. She couldn't handle my father's life anymore. The danger, the lies, the constant worry. One day she was just gone." I reached across to cover his hand with mine. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." But his fingers curled around mine, holding on. "She writes sometimes. Birthday cards, Christmas. Always with a return address somewhere warm. Florida, Arizona, California. She moves a lot. Do you ever visit her?" "No. She made her choice to leave. I made mine to stay." His thumb brushed across my knuckles. "Family obligations, remember?" We sat like that, hands linked across the counter, the weight of our respective responsibilities hanging between us. Then Nicholas said quietly, "I think about you constantly." My breath caught. "What?" "Every meeting I'm in, every phone call, every decision I make. Part of my mind is always wondering where you are, if you're safe, if you've eaten, if you're happy." His brown eyes met mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "It's distracting. It's dangerous given my line of work. And I don't care." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Nicholas, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know that this isn't casual for me. That you're not just someone I'm protecting, or someone who works for me." He squeezed my hand gently. "You're important. To me. In ways I'm still trying to understand." I should have been scared by the intensity of his admission. Should have pulled back, maintained distance. Instead, I found myself saying, "I feel it too. This thing between us. But I'm terrified it's just circumstance. Proximity and gratitude and the crisis with Tyler making everything feel more intense than it really is. And if it's not? If this is real? Then I'm still terrified." I met his gaze. "Because your world is dangerous, and mine is simple. And I don't know how those two things fit together without one destroying the other." Nicholas stood, moving around the counter until he was beside me. "What if we stop overthinking it? Stop trying to figure out how it works and just let it be what it is." "And what is it?" His hand came up to tuck hair behind my ear, the gesture achingly familiar now. "Something worth exploring. Something that makes me feel alive in ways I haven't in years." I stood too, closing the small distance between us. "I don't want to be just a distraction. Something that pulls your focus when you need to be sharp." "You're not a distraction, Gabriella. You're the reason I want to be better. To build something beyond what my father left me." His other hand found my waist. "Let me try. Let us try." The kiss happened naturally, inevitably, like something that had been building for months and finally found release. His lips were soft against mine, questioning at first, then deepening when I responded. My hands slid up his chest to his shoulders, feeling the strength there, the controlled power that he kept so carefully leashed. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nicholas rested his forehead against mine. "Was that okay?" I laughed. giddy and relieved and more certain than I'd been about anything in months. Yes, very okay. Good. Because I've wanted to do that since the night you answered that phone call in Italian. We stayed like that, wrapped in each other in the kitchen where so much of our relationship had developed, and I let myself believe that maybe this impossible thing between us could work after all. Tyler's recovery progressed better than the doctors had anticipated. 2 weeks after surgery, he was cleared to go home with the foster family, under strict instructions about rest and follow-up appointments. The relief I felt watching him walk out of Brooklyn Methodist under his own power, color returned to his cheeks, was profound enough to bring tears. "Stop crying, Gabs," he said, embarrassed but smiling. "I'm fine now. I know. I'm just happy." I hugged him carefully, mindful of his healing chest. "You scared me. I know. Sorry about that." He pulled back to look at me seriously. "Thank Nicholas for me. The foster parents told me what he did, what the surgery would have cost. I owe him everything. You don't owe him anything. Just focus on getting stronger." But Tyler was right. We both owed Nicholas more than we could ever repay. Not just the money, though that was staggering, but the speed with which he'd mobilized resources, the quality of care he'd ensured, the way he'd treated my teenage brother with genuine respect rather than condescending charity. With Tyler on the mend, I could finally focus on other aspects of my life that had been neglected during the crisis. The twice-monthly shifts I'd been picking up at the small cafe in Brooklyn, a leftover from before I'd gotten the full-time position at the penthouse, had become impossible to maintain. I'd been calling out constantly, and the owner, while sympathetic, needed reliable help. "I need to give my notice at the cafe," I told Nicholas one morning over coffee. "It's not fair to them to keep a position I can't fill." He looked up from his tablet. "You've been working 2 jobs this entire time? Just occasional shifts. A few hours twice a month when they needed extra hands during rush periods." I sipped my espresso. It was extra money for Tyler's medications. But now, with the surgery handled and him recovering, I don't need it anymore. Nicholas set his tablet down, his expression thoughtful. "The work you do here, it's more than what we initially agreed upon. You've essentially been managing the entire household staff coordination, not just cleaning. I don't mind. I like staying busy. That's not the point. The point is you're undercompensated for what you actually do." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "I'm increasing your salary, effective immediately. It should more than cover what you were making at the cafe." "Nicholas, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do. This isn't charity, Gabriella. This is paying you what you're worth." His brown eyes were serious. "Between managing staff schedules, handling vendor relationships, and maintaining this place, you do the work of a house manager. You should be compensated accordingly." The increase he showed me on his phone made my eyes widen. It was nearly double what I'd been making, putting me in a position where I could not only cover Tyler's ongoing medical needs but actually start saving substantial money toward that custody petition. "Thank you," I said quietly. "This means more than you know." "I do know. That's why I'm doing it." That same week, the atmosphere in the penthouse shifted again. More meetings behind closed doors, more tense phone conversations in Italian that I tried not to overhear. Nicholas's jaw was constantly tight, his shoulders carrying visible tension. "What's happening?" I asked one evening after a particularly heated call. "Territory disputes, getting more complicated." He rubbed his temples. "The triad is pushing from the east. Roberto's people are testing boundaries from the south. It's a coordinated pressure campaign." "What does that mean for you?" "It means I need to go to Chicago. There's a commission meeting, all the major families. We need to establish clear boundaries before this escalates into something worse." My stomach tightened. "How long will you be gone?" 4 days, maybe 5. He moved closer, his hand finding mine. "I don't want to leave you. But this can't be handled remotely. I'll be fine. I have Tyler to visit, my classes, and I started helping with that volunteer program at the hospital, the one assisting families with insurance paperwork and financial aid applications." Interest flickered in his eyes. "When did you start that?" "Last week. The hospital administrator mentioned they needed volunteers who understood the system, who'd been through it themselves." I shrugged. I thought I could help other people navigate what I just went through. "That's remarkable. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. Most people who've been through trauma want nothing to do with it afterward. You're turning it into something positive. I had help getting through it. Not everyone does. If I can make the process less terrifying for even one family, it's worth a few hours a week. Nicholas pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around me. You constantly surprise me, you know that? Good surprises? The best kind. He left for Chicago on a Tuesday morning after extracting promises that I'd check in with Marco daily and wouldn't deviate from my established routine. The penthouse felt different without him, larger and emptier despite the presence of household staff. I threw myself into structure. Morning shift, managing household operations. Afternoon classes at the community college where I was finishing my last 2 certificate requirements. Early evening visits to Tyler, who was recovering remarkably well. Late evening volunteer hours at Brooklyn Methodist helping families navigate the labyrinth of medical billing and insurance claims. The routine helped, kept me from thinking too much about Nicholas in Chicago dealing with dangerous people, from worrying about the territorial disputes he'd mentioned, from missing him with an intensity that surprised me. Thursday afternoon, I was leaving the hospital after a volunteer shift when a man approached me in the parking garage. He was in his 40s, expensively dressed, with the polished appearance of a businessman. Nothing overtly threatening about him except the deliberate way he positioned himself between me and my path to the exit. Miss Mitchell? Gabriella Mitchell? Every instinct I'd developed living in Nicholas's world screamed warning. Can I help you? I hope so. I represent some business associates who'd like to have a conversation with you. His smile was professional, practiced. Nothing dramatic, just a brief chat about your employer. I'm not interested. I moved to step around him, but he shifted to block me again. Hear me out before you decide. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for very simple information. Mr. DeLuca's schedule, his travel plans, who he meets with. Basic details that wouldn't compromise anyone's safety. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. Who do you work for? Does it matter? The offer stands regardless. $50,000 for a few simple details. Think about what that could do for your brother's future. The mention of Tyler sent ice through my veins. They'd researched me thoroughly enough to know my vulnerability. My answer is no. Now please move. Be smart about this, Miss Mitchell. People who cooperate with us are protected. People who don't. He let the threat hang unfinished. Without appearing to, I'd been recording on my phone since he first mentioned compensation. Years of being careful, of documenting things for my own protection, had made the action instinctive. Now I made sure it was visible. I'm recording this conversation. You've just attempted to bribe me for information about my employer, and threatened me when I refused. I'm leaving now. If you follow me or approach me again, I'm going directly to the police. Something flickered across his face. Surprise? Maybe respect. You're making a mistake. That's my choice to make. I walked past him, forcing my legs to remain steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. In my car, hands shaking, I immediately sent the recording to the lawyer Nicholas had mentioned once, David Hartman, whose contact information Marco had provided for emergencies. Then I forwarded it to Marco with a brief explanation. The response came within minutes. Marco calling, his voice tight with concern. Where are you now? Still in the hospital parking garage. I'm fine, he didn't touch me. But I wanted you to have the recording immediately. Stay where you are. I'm sending 2 men to escort you home. Don't go anywhere alone until Mr. DeLuca returns. The security detail arrived within 10 minutes. 2 of Nicholas's most trusted men who checked the garage thoroughly before escorting me to the penthouse. The remainder of Thursday and all of Friday passed with heightened security. Armed men positioned at every entrance. The atmosphere tense with waiting. Nicholas returned Friday evening, earlier than expected. I was in the kitchen preparing tea when I heard the elevator, his voice speaking rapid Italian to someone. Then he was there, crossing the space in long strides, his hands framing my face as he searched my expression. Are you all right? Did he hurt you? I'm fine. He never touched me, just tried to bribe me. I covered his hands with mine. I recorded everything and sent it to David and Marco immediately. I know. I heard the recording. Something fierce and protective blazed in his brown eyes. You handled that perfectly. Better than most of my men would have. I was terrified. You didn't sound terrified. You sounded calm and smart and absolutely certain. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. Do you know what he was offering? $50,000. Most people would have at least pretended to consider it, bought themselves time to think. You refused immediately. Of course I did. I'm not going to betray you for money. Why not? The question was genuine, curious. I'm not your family. We've known each other a few months. $50,000 could change your life. I pulled back slightly, studying his face. Do you really not know? Know what? That you matter to me. That the thought of helping someone hurt you makes me physically ill. That I'd rather have nothing and know you're safe than have everything and know I contributed to your destruction. Nicholas was silent for a long moment, something vulnerable and overwhelmed in his expression. Then he kissed me, deep and thorough and full of things we hadn't said yet. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I've never had anyone choose me like that. Not when it cost them something. Not when the easy path was right there. Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people. He laughed, the sound rough with emotion. Apparently. We moved to the living room, where Nicholas explained what the recording had revealed. The man was a known intermediary for Roberto Ferraro, confirming that the approach had been coordinated from the top. The fact that I'd recorded everything and reported it immediately had given Nicholas leverage, proof of Roberto's boundary violations that could be used with the commission. This actually helps, Nicholas said, laptop open on the coffee table showing messages from his Chicago meetings. Roberto's been claiming he respects the established protocols. This proves otherwise. So what happens now? Now I use this to force a formal mediation. He was right. In the weeks that followed, Chicago stopped being an abstract threat and turned into conference rooms, closed doors, and too many cups of coffee. The commission listened to the recording not as gossip, but as evidence. By the time they were finished, Roberto had been pushed back from several of the borders he'd been pressing, and the triad had formal constraints written into the new agreements. It wasn't peace, and it didn't magically turn Nicholas into a saint, but it redrew the map in a way that gave us room to breathe. Everyone watching understood that if they wanted to come for the pieces of the city tied to our foundation, they'd have to do it in the open, not through back corridors and parking garage threats. Roberto can't play innocent when there's documented evidence of him attempting to compromise my household security. He closed the laptop. It'll take time to resolve completely, but the immediate threat should decrease. Should? Nothing's certain in my world, Gabriella. You know that now. He pulled me closer on the couch. But I can promise you this. Anyone who comes near you again will regret it. The possessive protectiveness should have bothered me, should have felt like another cage. Instead, it felt like safety, like someone finally standing between me and the dangers I'd always faced alone. I need to tell you something, I said quietly, about why I wasn't even tempted by the money. You don't have to explain. I want to. I took his hand, lacing our fingers together. When I was with my last boyfriend, before I came to New York, he used to test me like that. Offer me things, money or gifts, or help with Tyler, but always with strings attached. Always with the understanding that I owed him something in return. By the time I realized what was happening, I was so tangled up in debt and obligation that leaving seemed impossible. Nicholas's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I swore when I finally got out that I'd never let myself be owned like that again, that I'd rather struggle honestly than be comfortable dishonestly. I met his eyes. So when that man offered me money to betray you, it wasn't even a choice, because you've never made me feel owned. You've never used generosity as leverage. Everything you've done for Tyler, for me, has been freely given. No strings. Never strings. Nicholas agreed quietly. I don't want you obligated to me, Gabriella. I want you to choose me because you want to. I do choose you. That's what I'm trying to say. I squeezed his hand. You're a good man, Nicholas DeLuca. Even in a world that rewards being ruthless, you've tried to be decent. And that matters to me more than any amount of money ever could. He pulled me fully into his arms, holding me like I was something precious and breakable. I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But you have me anyway. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other on the couch, the city lights twinkling through the windows. Whatever came next with Roberto, with the territorial disputes, with the dangerous complexity of Nicholas's world, we'd face it together. Not as employer and employee, not as protector and protected, as partners, as equals, as two people who'd chosen each other despite every logical reason not to. And somehow, that felt like the strongest protection of all. 6 months after that first kiss in the kitchen, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. Tyler was thriving, his energy returned, his color healthy. The volunteer program at Brooklyn Methodist had expanded with me coordinating 3 other volunteers now. And my accounting certificate was finally complete. I stared at the final grade report on my laptop screen, hardly believing the numbers. Straight A's across all courses. The technical certificate was mine, officially, after 2 years of night classes and exhaustion and doubt. Congratulations. Nicholas's voice came from the doorway of my suite, where I'd been working at the small desk. I turned, smiling. How did you know? Marco mentioned you'd been checking your email obsessively all morning. He stepped inside, hands in his pockets, looking relaxed in dark slacks and a white button-down with sleeves rolled to his elbows. The grades posted? Just now. I passed everything. Top marks. The reality of it hit me fresh, bringing unexpected tears. I actually did it. Nicholas crossed to me, pulling me up from the chair and into his arms. Of course you did. You're brilliant and determined. I never doubted it for a second. I doubted it plenty of times. I know. But you kept going anyway. That's what makes you extraordinary. He pulled back slightly, his brown eyes warm. We're celebrating. Tonight. No arguments. Nicholas, you don't have to make a big deal. It is a big deal. You worked for this while managing everything else in your life. That deserves recognition. His smile turned slightly mischievous. Besides, I already made plans. 8 o'clock on the terrace. Just us. The terrace had been transformed when I stepped out that evening. String lights crisscrossed overhead, creating a canopy of warm illumination. A small table was set for 2 with simple white linens and candles. Nothing ostentatious but undeniably romantic. The city sprawled below us, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. This is beautiful, I said, taking in the scene. Nicholas pulled out my chair, waiting until I was seated before taking his own. I wanted tonight to be special. Just you and me, celebrating what you've accomplished. Dinner was courses of my favorite foods, things Nicholas had learned I loved over months of shared meals. Fresh pasta with sage butter, roasted vegetables, a salad with pears and candied walnuts. Wine that tasted expensive, but not showy. Everything perfect in its simplicity. Tyler started his internship this week, I said between courses. He called me yesterday, so excited he could barely get the words out. Nicholas smiled. David mentioned he's doing well. Good instincts for the administrative side of things. After Tyler's full recovery, Nicholas had offered him a part-time position in the charitable foundation he'd established years ago, doing basic administrative work that would look good on college applications while teaching real skills. Tyler had been hesitant at first, worried about accepting more help, but I'd convinced him that sometimes you accept opportunities not as charity, but as stepping stones. He wants to take some business classes at community college next semester, along with his architecture courses. Says understanding the financial side will make him a better architect eventually. Pride swelled in my chest. He's thinking ahead, planning a real future. Because you gave him that chance. You fought for it. Nicholas reached across the table, his fingers finding mine. Everything you did, all the sacrifice and struggle, it's paying off. Tyler's healthy and building a life. You have your certificate and job prospects opening up. You should be proud. I am. But I didn't do it alone. I squeezed his hand. You made it possible, Nicholas. The surgery, the stability, the time and space to focus on school. I wouldn't be here without you. You would have found a way. You always do. After dinner, Nicholas retrieved a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. My breath caught, a moment of panic about what it might contain. But when he opened it, I found a delicate necklace instead of a ring, a sapphire pendant, deep blue and luminous, set in white gold with a simple chain. This belonged to my grandmother. Nicholas said quietly. My father's mother. She was the only member of my family who ever asked me what I wanted from life, instead of telling me what I owed. He lifted the necklace from the box. She wore this every day until she died, left it to me specifically, said to give it to someone worthy, someone who understood that family means choosing to show up, not just sharing blood. Tears pricked my eyes. Nicholas, I can't accept something so meaningful. Yes, you can. Because you are worthy, Gabriella. You embody everything my grandmother valued. Strength, loyalty, the courage to fight for the people you love. He moved behind my chair, fastening the necklace around my throat. This isn't about possession or obligation. It's about family, the one we choose to build. The sapphire settled against my skin, warm from his hands. I touched it gently, feeling the weight of history and intention. Thank you. I'll treasure it. Nicholas returned to his seat, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it. There's something else I want to tell you, about changes I'm making to the business. I waited, sensing the importance of whatever came next. I've been working with my lawyers and accountants to restructure things, gradually shifting away from the operations that exist in legal gray areas toward legitimate enterprises. Real estate development, restaurant chains, import-export of legal goods. He paused. It'll take years to complete the transition, and I'll never be entirely clean given my history. But I want to build something sustainable, something that won't destroy the people I care about. What changed? I asked, though I suspected I knew. You did. Being with you, seeing how you approach problems with pragmatism instead of ruthlessness, watching you build something positive from trauma. His eyes held mine. You make me want to be better. Not perfect, but better than I was. The Foundation's annual charity gala happened 2 weeks later, a massive event held at a luxury hotel in Midtown. Nicholas had been preparing for months. This year's fundraiser benefiting pediatric cardiac care at Brooklyn Methodist and 2 other hospitals. Given Tyler's recent experience, the cause felt deeply personal. I'd insisted on helping with the logistics rather than just attending as Nicholas's guest. For weeks, I'd been working with the event coordinator, managing spreadsheets, tracking RSVPs, coordinating with vendors. It felt good to contribute something tangible beyond just being arm candy for a powerful man. The night of the gala, I wore a dress Nicholas had selected. Champagne-colored silk that draped elegantly without being ostentatious. The sapphire necklace rested against my throat. My only jewelry. Simple but sophisticated. Or so Nicholas assured me when I'd worried about fitting in. You'll be working backstage most of the night, I reminded him as we rode to the hotel. I'm not attending as your date. I'm part of the team making sure everything runs smoothly. I know, though I reserve the right to steal you away for one dance later. The event was controlled chaos. I spent the first 2 hours in the staging area behind the ballroom, managing last-minute seating changes, coordinating with catering about dietary restrictions, and ensuring the auction items were properly displayed. The event coordinator, a woman named Patricia, who'd initially been skeptical of my involvement, had come to rely on my organizational skills. Gabriella, can you handle the backstage check-in for VIP arrivals? She asked during a brief lull. I need to manage the audio issues. Of course. I positioned myself near the private entrance where the most influential guests would arrive, tablet in hand with the master list. The first hour brought a steady stream of wealthy philanthropists, business leaders, and various members of the interconnected families that made up Nicholas's world. They were polite, but dismissive at first, assuming I was just event staff. But when I knew their names without checking, when I could direct them precisely where they needed to go, when I handled a seating dispute with diplomatic firmness, their attitudes shifted. You're the young woman Nicholas has been seeing, one elderly woman said, her shrewd eyes assessing me. Maria Santoro. My husband runs operations in New Jersey. Gabriella Mitchell. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Santoro. You're not what I expected. She studied me frankly. You're working, actually contributing instead of just draping yourself on Nicholas's arm for show. I prefer being useful. She smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her initial reserve. Good. We need more of that, and less decorative uselessness. My husband mentioned you handled an approach from Roberto's people with intelligence, recorded evidence instead of panic. News traveled fast in this world. I did what made sense. Exactly. She patted my arm. You'll do well here, girl. Just remember to keep your spine straight and your eyes open. Similar interactions repeated throughout the evening. The wives and matriarchs who actually wielded power in these families, often from behind the scenes, seemed to appreciate that I wasn't trying to impress them, that I worked instead of performing, contributed instead of consuming. By the time the formal program began, I'd earned a surprising amount of respect from people whose approval Nicholas claimed actually mattered. The gala raised over $2 million for pediatric cardiac care. Nicholas gave a brief speech about the importance of ensuring every child had access to life-saving treatment, regardless of their family's financial situation. He didn't mention Tyler specifically, but his eyes found mine in the crowd, and I knew who he was thinking about. Afterward, during the reception, Nicholas appeared at my elbow. Dance with me. I should help Patricia with cleanup coordination. 5 minutes. Dance with me. He led me onto the floor where other couples swayed to the orchestra's music. His hand was warm at my waist, solid and grounding. You were magnificent tonight, he said quietly. Patricia told me you basically ran the entire backstage operation. And Maria Santoro cornered me specifically to say she approved of you. Maria's terrifying. Exactly. Her approval means something. He pulled me slightly closer. You fit into my world better than I do sometimes. I don't know about that. I do. You navigate the politics without getting absorbed by them. You maintain your integrity while being practical. It's a rare skill. We swayed together, the moment feeling suspended from time and circumstance. When the song ended, Nicholas pressed a kiss to my forehead before releasing me back to my coordination duties. The business proposition came 3 days later, delivered by one of Nicholas's senior associates during a meeting in the penthouse study. I was passing through with coffee when I heard the numbers being discussed. 12 million in the first year alone, the associate was saying. Guaranteed income stream, minimal risk. The routes are already established. What's being moved? Nicholas asked. A pause. The clients prefer we don't ask detailed questions, but given the profit margin, we can assume it's not legal goods. I hesitated in the hallway, knowing I shouldn't eavesdrop but unable to move away. What areas would the routes cross? Primary corridors through Brooklyn and Queens. Some traffic through Lower Manhattan. Nicholas was quiet for a moment. That includes neighborhoods where our foundation operates, where the hospital programs are. Yes, but the operations would be completely separate. No connection between the charitable work and this business, except they'd be happening in the same communities, to the same people. Nicholas's voice had gone flat. Decline the offer. Sir, with respect, this is exactly the kind of opportunity that built this organization. The profit would fund expansion into legitimate markets faster. I said decline. After the associate left, I found Nicholas standing by the study window, tension evident in his shoulders. I entered quietly, setting fresh coffee on his desk. You heard, he said without turning. Some of it. Enough. I'm turning it down. The profit isn't worth the cost. I moved to stand beside him at the window. Can I show you something? At his nod, I pulled up a spreadsheet on my tablet, one I'd been working on for the foundation's quarterly review. These are the neighborhoods your foundation currently serves. Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, parts of Manhattan. 43,000 people directly impacted by programs last year. Food assistance, after-school programs, medical advocacy like what I do at Brooklyn Methodist. I swiped to another screen. This is the overlap with the routes your associate mentioned. 87%. Which means whatever gets moved through those corridors, 87% of the communities you're trying to help would be the same communities dealing with whatever that trafficking brings. Violence, addiction, instability. Nicholas studied the data silently. I'm not telling you what to do, I said carefully. Your business, your choice. But I thought you should see the numbers. The real impact beyond profit margins. He took the tablet, scrolling through the data I'd compiled. You put this together? I analyzed data for the foundation anyway. This was just connecting existing information. Nicholas set the tablet down and pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. This is exactly why I'm trying to change things. Because you show me the cost, not just the profit. The humanity, not just the numbers. You already knew the cost. You just needed someone to confirm you weren't crazy for caring about it. Maybe. He pulled back to look at me. I'm redirecting resources, building legitimate operations that can eventually replace the illegal income. It'll take time, but I'm committed to it now. To building something that doesn't require destroying communities to profit. That's a good legacy, I said softly. Better than what your father left. Better because of you. Because you helped me see what better looks like. We stood together at the window overlooking the city. Two people trying to build something honest from complicated origins. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't happen overnight. But we were trying. Together. And somehow that felt like its own kind of victory. 1 year had passed since that dinner party, when Nicholas had instinctively claimed me in front of Roberto Ferraro, setting everything in motion. 365 days of transformation. Of building something real from what had started as employer and employee, protector and protected. Now I stood in the private jet 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, watching clouds drift past the window, wondering what Nicholas had planned. He'd been secretive about this trip for weeks, only telling me to pack for warm weather and trust him. We're approaching the coast, Nicholas said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of wine. You should see it soon. Minutes later, the Italian coastline emerged from the haze, all golden cliffs and turquoise water sparkling under late afternoon sun. My breath caught as recognition flickered through memories built from my grandmother's stories. Is that Positano? Nicholas confirmed. Or close to it. The village where your grandmother was born is about 20 minutes south. Smaller, quieter, but just as beautiful, according to the records I found. Tears pricked my eyes. You brought me to Nana's village. I thought it was time you saw where your story began. Where her story began. His hand found mine, fingers lacing together. Before we start writing the next chapter of ours. The village was everything my grandmother had described in her stories. Narrow cobblestone streets winding up hillsides, houses painted in faded yellows and soft corals, laundry hanging between windows like colorful flags. The small church where she'd been baptized still stood at the village center, its bell tower visible from everywhere. Nicholas had arranged a guide, an elderly woman named Lucia who'd known my grandmother's family decades ago. She led us through the winding streets, pointing out landmarks with the enthusiasm of someone delighted to share her home's history. Your grandmother, she lived there. Lucia gestured to a narrow house painted pale yellow, its shutters a weathered green. The Russo family, they were bakers. You could smell the bread every morning throughout the whole village. I stood before the house, trying to imagine my grandmother as a young girl running through that doorway, her whole life ahead of her. Can we go inside? The family who lives there now, they are away visiting relatives. But I have permission. Lucia produced a key, unlocking the heavy wooden door. The interior had been modernized, but bones of the original structure remained. Low ceilings with exposed beams, a fireplace built into the wall, windows that overlooked the sea. I moved through the room slowly, my grandmother's voice echoing in memory, describing this exact layout, these exact views. She told me about watching fishing boats from this window. I said quietly, standing where she must have stood countless times, wondering what existed beyond the horizon. Nicholas's arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. And then she found out. Built a whole life in a new country. Raised you to be extraordinary. We spent the afternoon exploring. The church where Lucia showed us faded records with my great-grandparents' names written in careful script. The small square where my grandmother had described playing as a child, now home to a cafe with tables under ancient olive trees. The winding path down to the beach where she'd learned to swim. As sunset approached, Nicholas guided me to a restaurant perched on a cliff overlooking the Mediterranean. It was small and family-owned, the kind of place tourists rarely found. Our table sat on a terrace with nothing between us and the sea except air and possibility. This is perfect, I said, watching the sun paint the water in shades of gold and coral. Thank you for bringing me here, for making this real instead of just stories. There's a reason I wanted you to see this place. Nicholas reached across the table, taking both my hands in his. Your grandmother left here with nothing but courage and hope. She built an entire life from that. Raised a family, created a home, gave you the foundation you needed to become who you are. She was remarkable. You're remarkable. Her legacy living and breathing and making the world better. His thumbs brushed across my knuckles, the gesture familiar and grounding. I wanted you to stand where she stood, to see what she saw, before I asked you something important. My heart began to race as Nicholas stood, moving around the table. Then he knelt beside my chair, one hand still holding mine, the other reaching into his jacket pocket. The ring box was small and velvet, worn at the edges. When he opened it, the ring inside took my breath away. A sapphire, matching the necklace I wore, set in a band of white gold with delicate engraving along the sides. Modern, yet timeless. Elegant without being ostentatious. "Gabriella Mitchell," Nicholas said, his voice steady but his eyes bright with emotion. "I don't have a speech prepared because words feel inadequate for what I want to say. But I'll try." He took a breath, his brown eyes holding mine with absolute certainty. "A year ago, I said you were mine without thinking, without understanding what I was really saying. It was instinct, protective and possessive and completely inappropriate given our relationship at the time." A small smile touched his lips. "But it was also true. Some part of me recognized you even then. Knew you were important in ways I couldn't articulate. Nicholas, let me finish." His grip on my hand tightened gently. "This past year with you has taught me what partnership actually means. Not possession, not protection offered in exchange for dependence, but two people choosing each other every single day, choosing to be better together than they could be apart." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. "You make me want to build something worthy of you. A life, a legacy, something that won't corrode everything it touches. You see the best in me even when I don't deserve it, and you challenge me when I need it most." He lifted the ring from its box. "I'm not asking you to give up anything. Your work with the foundation, your studies, your independence, all of it stays. I'm asking you to build something with me. A real partnership based on choice and respect, and this absolutely terrifying love I feel for you." "Yes," I whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course, yes." Nicholas slid the ring onto my finger, the fit perfect, and stood to pull me into his arms. Our kiss tasted like salt and wine, and the future we were choosing together. Around us, the other diners noticed and began to applaud, but I barely heard them through the rushing in my ears. "I love you," I said against his mouth. "I've loved you for months, but I was too scared to say it. I love you too. So much it terrifies me sometimes." He rested his forehead against mine. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Gabriella. The absolute best." We stayed in Italy for a week, exploring the Amalfi Coast and Rome, introducing me to the country my grandmother had carried in her heart all those years in America. Nicholas was different here, more relaxed, laughing more freely, as if distance from his New York responsibilities allowed him to simply be. The wedding happened 3 months later, on a crisp November afternoon at the DeLuca family property upstate. Not the Manhattan penthouse, but the estate where Nicholas's father had been raised, where his grandmother had tended gardens and taught him to value family over empire. We kept it small. Tyler, recovered and thriving, stood beside me as I prepared in the main house's bedroom, his teenage awkwardness transformed into genuine joy. "You look beautiful, Gabs," he said, studying my reflection. "Like really beautiful. Not just brother duty beautiful." I laughed, smoothing down the champagne silk of my dress. It was simple, with clean lines and a fitted bodice that flowed into a floor-length skirt. No train, no excessive detail, just elegant simplicity that felt true to who I was. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Tyler wore a suit Nicholas had helped him select, looking far more mature than his 18 years. "This is crazy, right? A year and a half ago, I was in the hospital thinking I might not make it. Now I'm walking my sister down the aisle at some estate that probably has its own zip code." He shook his head. "Nicholas is good people, though. Takes care of his own." "He is," I agreed. "And you're his own now, too. Family." The ceremony happened in the garden, under an arbor wrapped in late-season flowers. 40 guests, mostly Nicholas's trusted associates and their families, plus Tyler and Nicholas's mother Maria, who'd flown in from Arizona for the occasion. Maria DeLuca was elegant and weathered, with her son's brown eyes and a smile that held decades of complicated emotions. She'd pulled me aside that morning, taking my hands in hers. "My son has never looked at anyone the way he looks at you," she'd said. "Like you're his anchor and his wings all at once. Thank you for loving him despite everything he comes from. Thank you for creating him," I'd replied. "Despite everything." Now I walked toward Nicholas on Tyler's arm, my brother giving me away with pride evident in every step. Nicholas stood under the arbor in a perfectly tailored black suit, his expression open and vulnerable in a way few people ever got to see. The vows we'd written ourselves were simple, promises to choose each other, to build together, to be honest even when it was difficult. No grandiose declarations, just truth spoken plainly before people who mattered. When the officiant pronounced us married, Nicholas kissed me with thorough intensity, and I heard Tyler whistle from where he stood nearby, making everyone laugh. The reception was dinner and dancing under string lights as the sun set, intimate and warm. Maria danced with her son, tears streaming down her face, making peace with the life he'd chosen even if she couldn't be part of it daily. Tyler charmed several of the matriarchs who'd approved of me at the charity gala, his natural intelligence and humor winning them over. Late in the evening, Nicholas and I escaped to walk through the gardens, needing a moment alone. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around my waist. "Completely." I leaned into him, the sapphire engagement ring now paired with a simple wedding band. "This was perfect. Exactly what I wanted." "Good. Because you're stuck with me now, Mrs. DeLuca." "I can live with that, Mr. DeLuca." 2 years later, I stood in the Foundation's office reviewing quarterly financial reports, my accounting degree finally complete and put to immediate use. The volunteer program at Brooklyn Methodist had expanded to 3 other hospitals, helping hundreds of families navigate the nightmare of medical billing. Tyler was in his 2nd year at Columbia studying architecture, his drawings now professional quality, his dreams taking concrete shape. Nicholas had kept his promise about restructuring the business. It had been slow, methodical work, but legitimate operations now generated 60% of the income, with plans to increase that to 80% within 2 years. Some families had resisted the changes, but Nicholas's reputation and strategic alliances had held. The late afternoon sun slanted through my office window as I felt the familiar flutter in my abdomen, stronger now than it had been weeks ago. 7 months pregnant, and our daughter seemed determined to make her presence known constantly. "Easy there," I murmured, rubbing the spot where a foot or elbow protruded. "Mama's trying to work. She's already taking after you," Nicholas said from the doorway, a smile in his voice. "Stubborn and making demands." I turned in my chair, taking in the sight of my husband. His hair was slightly longer now, threads of gray beginning at his temples, stress lines around his eyes from the weight he carried. But when he looked at me, at us, those lines smoothed into genuine contentment. "How was the meeting?" I asked as he crossed to me, his hand immediately going to my belly. "Productive. We closed the real estate deal in Brooklyn, going to build affordable housing with ground-floor commercial space for local businesses." He knelt beside my chair, speaking to my stomach. "Your mama helped structure the financing so it'll actually work long-term. She's brilliant, your mama. Stop talking to my belly. It's weird. She needs to hear her father's voice. All the books say so." His hand moved in gentle circles. "I was thinking about reading to her tonight. Maybe some architecture history for Tyler's sake." I ran my fingers through his hair, overcome with love for this man who'd transformed from dangerous Mafia boss to partner to father-to-be with such genuine commitment. "I never thanked you," Nicholas said quietly, looking up at me. "For what?" "For answering that phone call in Italian. For being exactly who you are in that moment when Roberto was watching. For letting me claim you, even though I had no right." His hand stilled on my belly. That impulsive statement started everything. Exposed something I hadn't admitted to myself. And led to this. He gestured around us, encompassing not just the office but everything we'd built. The foundation helping thousands. Tyler thriving. Our daughter growing strong. A life constructed on choice and respect rather than obligation and fear. "You would have found your way to me eventually," I said softly. "Some things are inevitable. Maybe, but I'm grateful it happened how it did. That I got to see you. Really see you. Before I understood what I was seeing, he stood, pulling me carefully to my feet and into his arms. I love you, Gabriella De Luca. More than I knew it was possible to love anyone. I love you too. I kissed him gently. Now let's go home. I want to put my feet up. And you promised to make that pasta your mother's recipe. We left the foundation office together, my hand in his, our daughter moving between us, the future uncertain but faced together. Whatever came next, whatever challenges the world presented, we'd handle it the way we'd handled everything else. Tyler had been part of every step that led us here. After long conversations with his adoptive parents and the social worker who had once suggested my best option was to let him go, we stopped talking about winning him back and started talking about what gave him the most stability. On paper, he stayed with the family that had raised him. In practice, he had 2 homes, 2 sets of parents, and more people fighting in his corner than either of us could have imagined when I was counting every pill at a plastic kitchen table. As partners, as family, as 2 people who'd found each other against impossible odds and chosen, every single day, to keep choosing each other.